A very good afternoon and welcome to this month's edition of Heritage Hour. Alinto Coelho is our resource person for this afternoon's session. Many of us who have met and interacted with Alint, and those of us who are his friend on Facebook, know that Alint is passionate about preserving Goan heritage. Alint holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the Goa College of Engineering. He provides professional consultancy civil engineering services in Goa, which includes the restoration of heritage structures. He has initiated a process of documenting heritage structures across Goa. Today, Alint will take us on a journey through Goan heritage houses. Before we start the session with Alint, I would like to request all our participants to please mute your mics. And if you'd like to keep your video on, I leave that up to you. If you have any questions, doubts, clarifications, comments, suggestions, I request you to put it all in the chat box and we will take it all up during the discussion after Alint finishes with his presentation. So with that, I'd like to welcome Alint and request you to start today's session. Alint, you'll need to unmute and put on your video. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. At the onset, I would like to thank Museum of Christian Art team and Natasha in particular for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation on my journey to Goan heritage houses. I have been acquainted with Goan heritage houses right from my childhood, when I used to visit my mother's ancestral home in Benauli. I spent most of my vacations at this house. I never realized the importance and the significance and the value of these houses. We only found them spacious and glamorous there. It was only in the year 2001 where I had got this professional engagement with heritage houses. It was when the late Dr. Vijay Kostapiyas entrusted me to restore his heritage house, the Kostapiyas house in Kandolim. I not only did the restoration of the house in terms of the structure, the roof, and we upgraded the flooring, we also did the restoration of the furniture at that point in time. And this has been my most satisfying project I have professionally done till date. The pictures I am showing you now, these are the pictures of houses I have visited in the recent times, but I have not done the restoration of this house. After the Kostapiyas house, I partly did the restoration of the Sioli Hilario Wing. Unfortunately, I don't have photographs to show that particular house. And at this point in time, I also took a break somewhere in 2005 in taking up restoration works because I found it very difficult in giving accurate estimates for restoration works. So when we used to give an estimate and say we used to remove the plaster, we used to find that there's something altogether different behind the plaster. They used to find cavities, or used to find masonry of laterite stones, or with laterite and laterite boulders. Then there were combination of masonry with laterite and mud walls. So it became very difficult to give an accurate estimate at that point in time. However, in the 3 years back, I was approached by Walter Mergulham Carvalho from Sinkitia to do some pelmets for his house. And here we ended up starting with pelmets and then doing the restoration of the entire house, from the roof, upgrading the flooring, modifying it. Here are some pictures of before and after. This is the altar area when you enter the house, before and after. This is the main hall, before and after. These are the pyramids which ignited the restoration work. And then I was also approached by a publisher to identify Goan heritage houses. So whenever I used to visit these houses, I used to ask the owners if they are on Facebook, and I used to tag them and post pictures on Facebook. And something interesting started happening when I used to post them on Facebook. There were comments like somebody commented from another part of the world that, oh, this is my godmother's house. And in reply to that comment, there was another comment for somebody from another part of the world saying, oh, wow, we used to meet here. I used to stay 2 houses away. So these houses, the elevation of these houses has been registered in the minds of people who have lived there or visited these houses or have been acquainted with these houses even decades ago. Photograph is sufficient to just ignite their memories and get them into nostalgia about their association with these houses. There is this, then another thing which enhances the elevations of these houses, makes them unique, are the windows, the external doors, and the railings of the balconies. Now, windows have stood out in the Goan houses because of these oyster shell windows. During my encounter with architect Helda Karita, who was the first author of a Goan book on Goan houses called Palaces of Goa, and who has been visiting Goa for the last 40 years. He, with research documents, says that this technique of using oyster shells in windows came from China. Probably it came to Macau, as it was another Portuguese colony. And Goa had abundant oyster shells available. So when So there were a lot of windows being done during that time with oyster shells. And then there was a shortage of oyster shells. So traders used to get oyster shells from the shores of Gujarat to Daman, because again, Daman was another Portuguese colony. But these windows, the craft is credited, I have to give credit to the workmanship and the craftsmanship of not only the carpenters who did these windows, but there was a separate set of carpenters who did railings for the verandas of this. Then there was this master masons who added that much needed glamour with their plaster bands around the windows. So basically, this was art piece, master art piece of um, craftsmen in carpentry, in craftsmen in masonry, who were all Goans. And this enhances the elevation to an extent that you do not find a single house across anywhere in the world which is similar to these Goan heritage houses. Then you see the railings, then the columns, the balconies, the masonry columns, some are cast iron columns, some are wooden columns, but this adds all to the much gracious elegance to the facade of the Goan heritage houses. Then there is this debate, what are Goan heritage houses to be called? Then you have this real estate agents who would normally name them as Portuguese houses in Goa, old Goan Portuguese houses, Goan houses with Portuguese architecture, and so on. However, when I visited this particular house in Shiroda, the Hede house, at the first glance you get the impression that this house is probably a Catholic house or influenced highly by Portuguese architecture with the cornices, the corbelling, the column plaster designs. But when you take a closer look at the window, you see the Indianness in the design by the wooden balustrades which are there. So, according to me, this example settles the argument on what we should be calling these houses. And what we should be calling them is Goan houses having Indo-Portuguese architectural style. Now moving to the interiors of these houses are glamorous. They give you the impression of aristocracy, royalty, but all family members, irrespective of whether they have managed to maintain the houses in great condition or whether they have not managed to maintain the houses, even they have not maintained well, they take pride in as they are owners of the house. So when I visit the house, they have actually taken to every nook and corner of the house, irrespective of how tidy or how untidy it has been, because they have that sense of pride to exhibit, uh, to showcase that this is their heritage house. And they would share stories about their ancestors who made a significant contribution to society. And then I came across this house in Denali, again, the Mosquito House, which is this house, the Narcis Mosquito House. And if you look here on top, uh, there is this portrait of one Mr. Vittal Rama Prabhu. This is the portrait of Vittal Rama Prabhu. Vittal Rama Prabhu was converted into Christianity in somewhere around the 1550s, and he was baptized by Father Miskita. The priest who baptized him was one Father Miskita. So he took the name after the baptism, during the baptism, he took the name as Rodrigo Miskita. And after being converted, he decided to extend this out to and make it bigger and in the style of architecture of the Portuguese influence. So this was finally what he completed in the 1600s. And what they also say is the family has sufficient documentation that the Mishkitas, especially from Benami, all the Mishkitas from Benami are the descendants of Vittal Ramapuru. There are other houses also have their own ways of documenting right from pre-conversion till date. Now I move to the bedrooms of various heritage houses, and the bedrooms are very spacious. The other thing is always stands up are the four-poster beds, which are almost there in almost every heritage house. And they have been spacious enough that accommodating uh, this particular piece of furniture uh, is the only piece of furniture which is called the camphor chest, which is not made in Goa. This has come from Macau. So as I was telling about the space, there are such spacious bedrooms that accommodating attached bathroom or toilet is not a major challenge. The dining rooms are also grand in their own way. And if you notice, these are dining tables from 12 to 24 people having dinner at the time. So you can imagine how many people stayed at one point in time in these houses. And of course, the glamour, the clothing, the chandeliers adds to that experience in the dining halls of these Goan houses. Then we had this crockery which came from Macau. We call it the blue and white crockery. I remember in my childhood eating in this, having my meals in this plates. But now, due to the fear of them getting damaged or broken, they find themselves on the walls as artifacts. And all this has come from Macau, and even today, every Goan is in love with this crockery that even be it an apartment or a brand new villa, this crockery is displayed as artifacts more than crockery for use. Now I would move to kitchens of these heritage houses. Most houses had a well attached to the kitchen. Then the kitchens were wood fired, and I have relished eating food cooked in these kitchens. However, today we find them as mini museums, or mostly they are converted into stores. In some cases, they have been totally modified into new modern kitchens, modular kitchens. Now I come to the most interesting part of these houses, which interests me the most in particular, are the chapels or the altars in these Goan houses. Now the slides I'm showing you now, this is the Kota house. So this is considered a chapel. The Anta house in Betalpati, the Sultana house in Arosi, the Braganta Pereira house in Changar. Now the reason these are called chapels even today is because they used to have regular mass for the public. And to attend mass here, you had to enter the house from the main entrance. And this chapel was somewhere inside. You enter another prayer room where this chapel was. However, in 1965, the Vatican Council too passed an order saying that this chapels in houses cannot conduct mass for the public. However, these houses continue to have mass once a year on the feast of the patron saint. Now, these are altars which you could be mistaken to and call them chapels, but these are not chapels because the simple reason being mass was never said in at these altars or in these houses on a regular basis. Maybe once in a while, but not if there was a priest in the house, he would say a mass, but not and it was not open to public. And these are called altars or orataru, not chapels for sure. I now move. Now, this particular house is from the Fernandez house in Hanamati, has a chapel, but this chapel continues to have mass even today for the public every Sunday. The reason being the chapel has an external door which can where the villagers or the public can enter the chapel without entering the house. So the Vatican Council too decision in 1965 was if it has an external entrance, only then masses can continue to be held on a regular basis. So Sunday masses are being held not only here in the Peninsula but even in the Loyola Convent house. So the sisters would enter from directly from the house to the chapel, but the general public and the villagers would enter it from the external entrance. Now I move to the Hindu family houses, the courtyards especially. And the courtyards, in my opinion, are the celebrated spaces of this house. You have the Tulsi Vrindavan in most courtyards. Then they have columns depicting the temple architecture. And many rituals have taken place in this house, especially ritual like the thread ceremony. Even marriages have taken place here. Now, if you look at the prayer rooms, or what the Hindu family would call a devakur, this is the Prabhu Pasekar Desai house in Parsin. So they have a small prayer room, the Devapur, where 2 or 3 people can enter at a time. But they have daily devotion in the mornings in this place. However, the family's full day or the family deity is at a temple. In this case, it is the Sri Devi Bhagwati Devasthan in Parsin. The Desai the Arabo in Dargad, they have the deity in the prayer room as the Bhavani Shankar, meaning Goddess Parvati and Lord Shankar. However, the family deity, the full day, is Sri Mulvir at Malpia Temple in Pune. The Gaonekar house, their main deity in the prayer room is Lakshmi Narayan, and on the left corner is the Lakshmi Narayan, and the left is Hanuman. In the Kuldev, the family deity is in the Sri Nagesh Maharudra temple at Nageshi, Bandara. The Nayak Conte house. The Nayak Conte house has a stone idol. This stone idol is that of Lord Venkapati. However, they have the picture of their Kuldev, the family deity, which is Lord Nagesh. And again, the main deity is in the temple of Nageshi. The Savarkar house. The Savarkar house also, the family deity is, the Kuldev is Sri Santadurga. However, in this particular prayer room, there is something symbolic to Sri Santadurga in terms of a footwear is displayed here. Footwear is displayed here. And again, the main deity is in the Santadurga temple at Kauli. Then there is one big festival which normally ignites and reunites the family in this house. It brings brings the house to life, and that is the festival of Lord Ganesh, the Ganesh Chaturthi. So when I visited these houses, they should show me some rooms which are closed. Then they should tell me, if you want to see the entire house open, you will have to visit the house during Ganesh. So the family members from across wherever they are come here, so it becomes like an annual family reunion. And it surely brings the entire house to life. And then towards the end of the festivity is the Visarjan or the immersion, which is done at a designated place in the village. So that also helps the families meet other families, the other villagers whom they have not met for a long time. So the festivity of Lord Ganesha is a reunion of the families, but for me, more importantly, it brings the house to life and to its past glory of how many people used to normally live in that house. Then I moved to a section of artworks, which I would classify, which I put as artworks in terms of paintings, religious depictions, in terms of furniture, in terms of clothing. And most of these artworks have been done by the house owners along with some artisans. In certain houses, I've been told they even have the template of these clothing. And coming back again to the carved furniture, this carved furniture is exclusively Goan, done maybe in rosewood in some cases, teak wood in some cases, and in some cases it's also jackfruit wood was used because it is a softer wood and easier to carve. In my interaction very recently with Professor Walter Rosser of University of Coimbra, he mentioned that this furniture is found only in Goan houses. If you go to Portugal, you don't find any furniture of this sort in any house in Portugal. And if you want to see such furniture in Portugal, we have to visit the museums in Portugal. Then there are these depictions from the Bible. This is the Garden of Eden. Then this is the depictions of Raja Ravi Varma, which the family has reproduced to using local Goan artisans. And in the case of those paintings, even the paint was manufactured at the house. Now I will come to an interesting depiction which I saw in furnitures and in these paintings are the carvings. This is the machil which we now is placed as an artifact in almost every house. And uh, this is what I would like to elaborate upon. You can see this is a Catholic house. This is a European chair or classical design. But you see in the center a deity of a Hindu god. And you see here at the side depiction of the serpent. Now it was the carpenters who made this furniture were probably the Charis of Kungoli. And then you have this house, the Kundekar house, where you see depiction of angels. And in all probability, this was done by the artist who may have been a Catholic. But the larger point I want to make here is, in those days, the owners respected and accepted the imagination and the craftsmanship of the artisans. So they did not question them that this particular artwork or this particular motif does not fit in the ambience of my house. They just accepted and they respected the decision of the craftsman, which is very rare in recent times. Then we have, and all these furniture are made locally. Clothing patterns, where you see these patterns probably are designed by the owner himself. And I am told in certain houses that it was a certain member of the family who sat with the tile fitter, whatever, and placed them. So they actually worked along with to make sure that it comes out as per their imagination. Because in those days there was no photograph to show replicate something. Then we have this amazing false ceilings, which are definitely decorative in nature, but then they have these openings, which are specifically for ventilation. So these false ceilings are not only architectural for architectural aesthetics, but they also ensure that ventilation happens and the hot air moves out to the roof due to this design. This particular flooring is done with broken crockery, which the family had got hands to. And you see, some of the furniture is custom made as per the owner's requirement. You will not see more this particular piece very often. It is something rare to a particular house. And of course, the chandeliers in these houses came basically from Belgium, and mostly they have been created by the East India Company. Now I reach to an interesting point of the another element which is seen in not many houses, a couple of houses, and that is the coat of arms. Now, this, in case of the Monteiro house, one of the ancestors, namely José João Monteiro, was conferred with the coat of arms on 9th December 1803 by the King of Portugal. And the title was given that of the Fidal to Jose João Monte. So after that, the house was called Casa do Fidal, the Costa Frias house. Another ancestor from this house, Pascual Anton de Frias, was conferred with the coat of arms on 1st March 1971. And later there was another decree on 7th of January 1690, where the decree said that this title is eternally transmitted to the descendants of Pascal Anton de Frias. The Casa Dempo also has one of his ancestors, Guido Soido Sinai Dempo, was conferred with the coat of arms on 16th March 1869 in recognition of his dedication and loyalty. And all these coat of arms have been decreed or given by the King of Portugal, or the monarchy of Portugal. In 1910, it was stopped because the monarchy ended. Now I would like to, these heritage houses need a lot of maintenance. So there are various other ways of, we call it adaptive reuse. So this is a house which was in Pada, which I not only did the restoration, but we did the interiors and converted into a boutique store. This is before and after, and this is in Pada, and now it's a boutique store. Then the Braganza Pereira Chandor allows visitors, and they have a host of people coming to their place for photography, especially bridal photography. Pre-marriage or post-marriage, there was the entire bridal entourage. Hindu families, Catholic families come to this house just for the purpose of photography. Then we have the Loyola Pereira house in Benauli, where Omar and Nadia and Selvin do this performance, physical performance, which is also served with authentic Goan snacks. And then the Figaro Mansion. The Figaro Mansion does a whole host of different things. They have a museum which is open to visitors almost every day. They turn the dining room into a banquet hall to have banquets. Then they have this dining area specifically for the guest rooms of the homestay. So there is a lot that can be done and needs to be done. However, the only way forward for restoration and conservation of these houses is, in my opinion, the family gets united and forms something called like a registered family trust. That's the way forward. And I once again thank Team Mocha and Natasha before I can say thank you.
Thank you, Alinto, for this journey through heritage houses, for taking us into so many houses and showing us the various aspects of Goan houses. And I have a question for you that if the participants have questions, please put it into your chat box, or you have any comments to make, please put it into the chat box and we'll take it up during the next few minutes. I have one question for you, Alinto. How many houses have you documented in the last few years? I mean, we see it on Facebook, but we've lost count. Do you have count?
Yes, I have crossed, I am around the 150 mark.
Okay.
I have seen and visited another 60 houses in the past, but I have not documented in terms of photography. So I have seen around 200 houses, but I have documented in terms of photography, and now families are opening up and sharing the history of the house. So that's a count of 150.
Okay, thanks. That's a big number of houses that you visited. Kevin Fernandez has a question for you. He says, lovely to go through these magical Goan homes with you. He has a question. Are there craftspeople in Goa who still make oyster shell windows?
Yes, there are, but oyster shells are not legally available.
Okay. So
Only
then,
you,
so what does one do if one has oyster shell windows and there is a window which is damaged and needs some oyster
now
shells to replace them?
the, now the village of Chikali has opened up, provided the oyster shells are harvested after, the oysters are harvested after a certain period. Then we also get this customary, like a small hanging lampshade, which we buy them and remove the shells to use to repair windows. And we try to salvage from whatever windows which cannot be salvaged.
Okay, all right. There's also another question from Kevin before I take on the next. He says you're absolutely right about the distinguishing feature of Goan homes and the largeness of bedrooms. Given that most of these rooms are minimally furnished and these rooms were not used for most parts of the day, why were these rooms so large? Is there any particular reason why the rooms would have been as large as they are?
So because of the rooms were large, because of they wanted that space, aristocracy, and bedrooms also had other furniture. They had the cupboard, the they had the jug with water to wash hands. They had even a mobile sort of commode in case of emergency at night to be used. There were a lot of things. Then they used to there is space only also to have a cradle or whatever. But
Okay.
space was the luxury of these houses, irrespective of whether it was the bedroom, dining room, the main hall. They were always spacious.
Okay, he has the last question from Kevin here is there any documentation on motifs of the furniture carving and the floor mosaic?
Is there?
Is there any documentation on the motifs of furniture carving and floor mosaics?
That is what I am doing as of now, as far as the furniture is concerned, along with architect Helder Karita, because he has done extensive research on Goan furniture.
Okay. Yeah, so to answer Kevin also, there are books which have some references, but there is no detailed documentation. But there are books which have made references, and there are articles about Goan furniture in these books.
Yeah. So there is a publication in the pipeline as far as Goan furniture is concerned.
Okay, all right. We look forward to that. Rajiv says wonderful presentations. Snehal says lovely presentations. Snehal has a question. Snehal is from Pune, but always attends all our heritage sessions. Thanks, Snehal. Where can we find or get oyster windows done? Oh, Snehal, I think this question has already been answered. Yeah. So it's not so easily available anymore, and it's not legally available. And in case you have something which is damaged, then you have to just source it from somebody else who may be discarding some oyster shell window for whatever reasons. Vijay Sood has a question, says, is there an evolution of styles over time?
Is there?
Is there an evolution of styles over time? I guess the house style, the design, is there an evolution that you've noticed from the older ones to the more recent homes?
Yeah, so so the older homes are a combination of Indian architecture and Portuguese European architecture. So the newer homes are either one-sided, it is purely European architecture. You normally not find a combination of both. That's why I gave the example that this should be called Indo-Portuguese architectural style.
Okay, Vijay, I hope that has answered your question to a certain extent. Lucilia has a question. She asks, which houses are supposed to be called heritage houses? If you
In my opinion, heritage houses would be a house which should be definitely more than 100 years old and has to have some architectural relevance or difference in terms of architectural design compared to the modern house.
Okay, Michelle also had this similar question. So Michelle, you've got your answer there. Snehal has another question as to a lot of Goans are going abroad, maybe migrating abroad. So what is the future of the lovely heritage houses that they have here in Goa?
So that's what I ended it with. We need to form something called like a family trust and register it and then take it forward.
Okay. Annabelle Lopez says, wonderful presentation, Aline. How many of these houses, she asks the question, how many of these houses have legal protection as heritage?
There
Among
is
the
no,
houses that you have visited.
yeah, there is no legal protection as heritage.
But there are no houses at all from the ones that you have visited, like the Braganza Pereira or the Figueiredo house that have a heritage tag legally.
They have no, they don't have only those houses which are in conservation zone have that legal protection. Like the area of Fontaines, Kampal, then in Margao around Holy Spirit Church. Only the areas are called conservation houses, so they get protected because they are in conservation zones. If they are standard like in Chanda or somewhere, there is no legal protection.
Not as yet. Adil Desai has a question. He asks if there is any information about ceramic tiles that are famous in Goa. Ceramic tiles, or is maybe Adil, you're talking about the azulejo tiles that are famous in Goa? Is that what you are referring to? Okay, we'll wait for Adil to respond to that. Shaksh has this was interesting. Thanks for sharing. Lauren, hi, wonderful meeting. Hope we have more of these. This is my first. I was wondering if there are technicians still doing lime mortar. Tried to check online and found only one source in West Bengal. So do we have, this is from Ken Barboza, sorry, this question. If we have people or conservators who are still doing, or artisans who are still doing lime mortar work?
Yes, we do have.
Yes. So you can get in touch with Aline for more information on that. So Michelle Bambawale is asking, when was oyster shell made illegal, or when was it made illegal to make these oyster shells? It's not illegal to make the oyster shell windows, Michelle, but it's illegal to go and procure oyster shell from the riverbeds. Am I right, Ali?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Do you think there is a disadvantage? Ken asks another question. Do you think there is a disadvantage of using cement as opposed to lime in Goa to reduce the damp?
No, cement is, there's a difference between cement and lime. The reason lime was used, I'll give you the example, if cement is used, if we use cement for the external wall, and due to the monsoon, the rainwater hits these walls and penetrates the wall, the plaster, the cement plaster, then there's no way that the plaster would come out. It would always remain in the masonry wall, and it would keep soaking the wall, and you would just get evaporated based on how long it remains there. But when you have the lime plaster for the external wall, and the same thing happens that rainwater hits the external wall with lime plaster, the water penetrates in, but during the dry season, there is a chance for the water to evaporate and it comes out through the lime cluster. In case of cement, it cannot come out. The lime cluster is porous, so it can come out. That's why they also say that these old Goan houses breathe. And this is the concept of breathing which they refer to.
Okay, thanks, Alim, for clarifying that. We have Achilia Fernandez who says, if you can throw some light on the comparison between houses in the old conquests and new conquests, if at all you can.
Yeah, the houses in the old class are purely influenced by the Portuguese architecture, Indo-Portuguese architecture. But if you see in the new conquest, they have come gradually. They have smaller, like the Shiroda house. But there is probably only one house in Shiroda which has this sort of architecture. So it was also the status of the family which decided whether they would go in for that. But there, of course, yes, there are fewer houses, but elements from the architecture, like especially the cornices, the fall bearings, the plaster designs continue to be there.
Okay. So going back to Adil's question, it was not ceramic tiles, but the what we call the azulejo tiles. I just
Yeah,
want
azulejo tiles are available like at Valia, Goa, then the other places. But then you also get ceramic tiles with the azulejo color and patterns.
Okay, so there are both.
Yeah, both combinations.
That are available in Goa,
Yeah.
easily available in Goa now.
Yeah.
But were they always as popular and famous in Goa, or do we see this as a recent phenomenon in Goa?
Azulejo is in Goan houses is a recent home. I have not come across a single house with azulejo styles. I have seen azulejo styles only in places like the Ignatius Braganza Hall, then the chapel, then it, Santa Monica Church. There is something similar to azulejo. Then the So it is seen more in public spaces, in a few public spaces, but this is a recent development of azulejo tiles being used in houses. Not a single heritage house of the 150 I visited have heritage, have azulejo tiles.
Okay. Thank you, Ali. And I think we have, Snehal still asks another question or as to, what is the future of these houses if the people are migrating abroad? Like Ali said, a family trust fund, right, Ali?
Yes, to form a family trust, registered family trust.
Okay. Leonardo Vaz asks, it's very common to see wet floors during monsoon in old Goan homes. What exactly is the reason behind this?
See, what happens is, one thing is the old Goan homes, the flooring, the top layer is just 1 inch in thickness or the thickness of the tile or the red oxide mortar which is there. But what actually happens is when it rains heavily, the atmospheric temperature and the groundwater temperature is almost the same. So you don't see any dampness on the floor in these houses when it's raining. Like as of now, you'll not see.
But
But after a couple of days, after it stops raining, it is something called relative humidity. So the atmospheric temperature in the house gets hotter, and it is more. The temperature is more than the groundwater, the soil below. So the water tends to do capillary action, rises up to the backfilling up to the plane, and when it reaches the flow, there is no, and they never used to put a layer of concrete or 4 inch layer which we do now. So then it to reach right up to the floor, and then there was no way for it to travel. So at the floor it should condense, and then you could see it as water. So that is the basic reason. So what we do now is, of course, it is very difficult in some cases where we ensure that there are proper stormwater drains, that the water is taken away from the house, or if there is red oxide and the owners want to change the flooring, then we excavate 1 foot, do the regular soling PCC and put the new tiles.
Okay. I hope Leonardo, it answers your questions. Going back to Adil's question on the ceramic tiles, weren't they more expensive to procure and hence some places have them? It is possible. One is expensive. Also, maybe there were not as many skilled artisans who were able to make it here locally, or it was easily procured here. It was available maybe easily in Portugal, but not in Goa. But in the recent years, there have been many Goans who have gone and trained and learned to make these azulejos, and that's why we have 2 or 3 workshops in Goa that are making azulejo tiles, and that's why you see more use of it on our in our homes, on the nameplates outside our homes, in many heritage spaces. Also, you will find now or heritage homes maybe as a new addition to enhance the houses. Okay, so Lucilia, you have a question on how does one enroll a house to a heritage house? Alin, will you be able to answer this question?
Yeah, if it is genuinely a heritage house, we'll have to make an application to the town and country planning department. But then you should understand what are the requirements in terms of if you want to do any subsequent renovation and all, you have to, then it is controlled by heritage norms. So you will have to go back to the conservation committee and give your proposal and all to. But it is possible to enroll.
All right. Alin, I have a question for you before we end today's session. I hope I've taken all the participants' questions. I think I have. Did you, while you have been on this journey documenting heritage houses of Goa, did you find any 2 identical houses?
No.
So any similarities in the design that you
Similarities in window designs, in plaster design, similarities in railings are there, but no 2 houses are identical.
Okay. Thank you to all our participants for having attended this session today. And thank you very much, Alin, for making this wonderful presentation on the heritage houses of Goa that you have visited and interacted with the families in these homes. And looking forward to seeing more of your Facebook page with many more of these images of the houses. It always excites us, yes, because there is always a link. We may know the person living in the house. It might be a relative or a friend's house. So it's always exciting to see these images, and hopefully you will come up with a publication someday. Yeah, so thank you all, and thanks again. And looking forward to seeing you next month for another Heritage Hour session. Thank you and have a great weekend.